Going, everyone? Welcome back to Zero Sugar Reviews. I'm your host, Sean, and today we're going to be starting on a new, rather ambitious series that I expect to fill in the gaps between new album reviews and tier list type content in 2025. And that is looking at Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time list. They update this list about once every 5 years and publish a new version. The most recent version came out in December of 2023. And over the next, 2 years, basically, I plan to listen to every album on this list, including re-listening to ones I've heard already, and reviewing them for this channel. Why not? We need content. We need something to do in between album reviews. Why not more album reviews from a different angle? That's what I'm good at. So today we'll be looking at Rolling Stone's number 500 selection, Funeral, the debut album by the American and Canadian rock band Arcade Fire. And it was an interesting start off to this because I had actually never heard Funeral. I had never heard an Arcade Fire album ever. I started reviewing albums in 2018. I think that's the year Everything Now came out. I didn't get around to it. I didn't listen to We in 2022. That was a year where I wasn't as active. So Arcade Fire has escaped me up until this point. This is my first experience with the band. And yeah, it was on me for missing out for so long. This album is great. And that's not going to come as a surprise to anyone who's a fan of indie rock or 2000s nostalgia music in general. This album is pretty good. I wouldn't say it's like completely excellent. I'm not sure I would place it on one of my favorite albums of all time lists. But the feelings I got listening to this album were incredible. I listened to this album on a long drive up north to go to some record stores that I like a couple states away a few days ago. And it was absolutely the right choice to listen to this album on the road. Like, that is the right environment for this record. It is so sweeping and grand that listening to it while driving on the highway is just an incredible feeling. It's obviously nowhere close to the Joshua Tree, but the feelings I got while listening to this album were about as close as I've gotten to that feeling of hearing the Joshua Tree for the first time again. And that's saying something. This album is mostly centered around the Neighborhood Suite, the first 5 songs on the album, 4 of which are titled as part of the Neighborhood Suite, 1 of which is not. It's titled in French, and the French, which I can't pronounce, translates to A Year Without Light. And these songs are about the Great Ice Storm of 1998 and are fictionalized versions of the band members' experiences dealing with that in Canada. This is easily the highlight of the album. I do feel like the album kind of takes a little bit of a dive in quality in the second half. It's not quite as good. But the first half of this album is excellent. Tunnels is a great introduction. And, as someone who doesn't live in Canada, but does live in the north, I am aware of giant snowstorms, and so a lot of the imagery on this album is familiar to me and things that I have experienced in my own life. Tunnels is a great introduction. I love the drumming on Laika, and the gang vocals on Laika specifically in the second verse are fantastic. Power Out, the third song, is probably my favorite on the whole record. Win Butler's vocal delivery kind of changes several times throughout this album. It's not the most powerful voice for this kind of anthemic rock. It's got that more kind of wispy indie quality, and I could see that being a turnoff to some. But I actually really enjoy his delivery on some of these songs. Power Out specifically, his kind of manic yelping delivery reminds me a lot of the style of Isaac Brock of Modest Mouse. And the varied instrumentation on this song, the way it opens with so much guitar and I think that's accordion and keyboard, it reminded me a lot of the Waterboys and their big music era, which is another favorite all-time musical style of mine. So a lot of the bands that this band seems to be looking up to and emulating are among my favorites, so it's not surprising to me that I really enjoyed this. Seven Kettles is a more low-key track, as is A Year Without Light. And I feel like they balance out very well. They make a very interesting suite. If they release this as an EP, it would be one of the greatest EPs I've ever heard. But there is a second half to this album, and while the song Wake Up, which seems to be their signature song based on download numbers and everything, is excellent, that kind of there are several songs like this, like big indie anthems whose choruses are just big wordless yelps, and some people don't like those. I tend to be a sucker for them, and this is no exception. It's a very simple song. You've heard of the 3-chord punk song, you've heard of the 2-chord song. This is a 1-chord song. That guitar is strumming that same power chord the entire time, and they're just chanting over it, and it is magic. It is one of the more enchanting examples of doing much more with less that I've seen in a musical context. And considering this band is so grandiose and puts in so many instruments, I feel like the minimalist way that they constructed that song makes it stick out really well. It's easily my favorite on the second half of the album. The rest of the second half of the album doesn't do much for me. I know Rebellion is one of their bigger songs. It didn't really stick out to me. Maybe it'll grow on me. I do see myself listening to this album more in the future and exploring Arcade Fire more in general. I'm excited to spend a good part of this weekend listening to and trying out Neon Bible, their sophomore album, which I've also never heard because I haven't heard any of their albums. So this will be really interesting. I'm excited to explore the rest of their discography. As for a score for Funeral, I'm of the mind of several critics that scoring albums kind of dumbs down the conversation on them. It allows you to just look at a number and categorize it in your mind. But I keep a Rate Your Music page. It's under the same name if you're curious, Zero Sugar Reviews. And because I'm going to catalog what I listen to on there, I might as well transfer my scores over here. I'm going to give Arcade Fire's Funeral a 7, a strong 7 at that. The first half of the album is a 9, the second half of the album is a 6. I'm evening it out at a strong 7. I think that this album is definitely essential listening for anyone who's never heard it. This is definitely an album that any music fan should experience once. You can definitely dedicate 48 minutes of your life to this and experiencing it for the first time. At least listen to the Neighborhood Suite. Like, listen to the first 5 songs on this album. It is an incredibly invigorating and interesting experience for anyone interested in indie rock, alt rock, or art rock. That's really all I've got to say on Funeral. I'm excited for this new series. It's very ambitious. I have the very ambitious plan for 2025 in general with the video a day format. We're going to see how that goes. We're going to see how all of this turns out. Thank you all for sticking with me as we kind of get this channel running. I've had several channels in the past, as I've mentioned, but this is really the one I'm kind of going for the home run on. So thank you all for supporting me so far. The rate of growth we've seen has been pretty impressive for a small channel just uploading independent music content. So thank you for supporting. Please like and subscribe if you have not already. It helps me out. It's free. You can unsubscribe later if I annoy you. And I will see you guys in the next video.